So in this video, we're going to do a split stitch. Now it's best when you're doing a split stitch to either use one strand or even numbers of strands. So 2, 4, 6, because you're going to be splitting and you want to split it evenly. Okay, so for this, I'm just using one strand. So it's very tiny. So I'm just going to zoom in and make sure you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to make a stitch. So I've come up at the beginning of the line and just make a small stitch. And then I'm going to come up in the middle of that stitch and I want to split the thread. Okay, so I'm coming up in the center, but also in the middle of the thread. And you want to split it. You want to try and split it evenly if you can. And then you're going to go back down through the fabric. And again, splitting this new stitch. And you should nearly be meeting the old stitch, okay? So you're almost overlapping those stitches. And again, down here. And coming up and splitting the threads in that stitch. It is a bit finicky when you only have one strand to come up in the center and get it nice and neat and even looking. But this is also why it's good to have even numbers of strands if you're using multiple strands. So if I was using 2 strands, obviously I want to come up in between the 2. If you're using 4 strands, you want to come up evenly, so you want 2 on either side of the needle. Okay, now obviously that is something that comes with a bit of practice to get it nice and neat and even looking. But this is a very secure stitch, so it's used very often to outline a shape before you do either satin stitch or long and short stitch to cover it. It's used almost like a barrier with those stitches so that you get a nice, neat, even edge. Can also just be used for any sort of line stitches or text. It can be quite good for them. But you're just constantly splitting each stitch. You don't want your stitches to be too big either. You want them to be quite close together so that they're a bit more even. If you find it, if you find pushing your needle back up through the stitch can kind of loosen it a bit, what you can do is just pull on the thread at the back so that you're holding it in place while your needle comes up and splits those threads. Okay, just keeping it nice and secure for you to split that nice and evenly. I feel like I've said even about 10 times in the last minute, but you know what I mean. But that is pretty much your split stitch. As always, if you have any questions at all, don't be afraid to ask. I will do my best to answer them. And hopefully you get on all right with your split stitch.